Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this special CPD and an introduction to uLaw, but specifically talking about how you can, as a legal professional in the province of Ontario, as well as across Canada, get ready for your law society audit, how you can be proactive in the steps that you take right from starting your firm to the day that you actually get audited, how practice management tools and legal accounting tools can enable you to be audit ready at all time. So we're also going to talk about the do's and don'ts of the legal accounting and the practice management tools. Just so you know, this particular webinar has been approved for 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits by the Law Society of Upper Canada or Ontario, and you are able to log into your LSUC portal and be able to apply this. For those who don't know us, uLaw, we are a proud Canadian company that deals with legal accounting and practice management. So we're basically a software company that enables our clients to be compliant in a very cost-effective and Canadian and cloud-hosted way. Okay, so we're a cloud-based practice management and legal accounting product. And today's agenda is to talk about the audit process itself and how do you prepare for that audit, and the methodologies and the procedures or process that you have, and the record keeping that goes behind being compliant with the Law Society, and the proactive measures that you can take, why the use of bookkeeping tools such as the legal accounting and practice management tools, and build that practice discipline, if you will, about being able to walk through that process right from day one to the day of the audit, and having that, we're going to talk about some of the do's and don'ts and what you should keep in mind. And comes to the financial review, we're going to highlight the bookkeeping, the records, the reports that are required, such as the trust documents, including your trust ledger, your journals, etc. We're going to talk about the general books, such as the general ledger journals, fee book, expense book, disbursement journals, as well as any procedural documentation, such as deposit slips, Form 9A, intermatter trust transfer, depending on the silos of practice you focus on. Okay, and last but not the least, we're going to touch upon a review of the technology and the tools that you do the due diligence to choose. Things of nature in terms of the capability of these tools, the types of questions that you may want to ask yourself when you go through that process of actually buying a software or a tool that can amplify your effort, right? And professional rules of conduct review, and last but not the least, the practice management and legal accounting solutions that you should keep in mind for audit-proofing yourself. And I would like to remind all our participants today that kindly do use the chat window within the tool provided to ask any questions that you may have, or you can wait till the end for the questions. What is an audit and why me, right? So that's always the question for all legal professionals who've just started their firm. I believe within the first 18 months of your practice, you're guaranteed of a spot audit or an audit process. And the purpose of this audit process, from our understanding and talking to and interviewing legal professionals, is that the audit supports and promotes high-quality legal firm or law firm record keeping by answering questions and providing a guidance regarding various aspects of your legal touchpoints, including trust, general record keeping, mortgages, wills and estate, and providing a support and ensuring compliance with Law Society. So the audit, from our perspective in layman's term, is truly to promote and have a proactive measure to track and measure your progress in being a compliant legal professional. It's not necessarily a way to catch you on the wrong foot. It's really not to pinpoint and find fault. Those may be components of the audit, is finding a fault, which really is, you could have done better here, make sure you do this better, these documents were missing, but all that is kept in light with a certain level of seriousness, of course, but also with the sentiment being that if these patterns or if there's a discipline that's missing, that they're able to catch it early, and for you as a legal professional, you can learn from that experience and pivot or tweak the way you actually run your business to stay compliant moving forward. Okay? So to truly answer the question of why me is it's truly a question of how can I be audit proof and audit ready at all times, which would not even lead to the question of why me. And if it's why me, it's designed as a proactive compliance measure. Okay? So the audit again supports a proactive measure to ensure that you as a legal professional in this province or in this country are doing all the right things that you have to do to stay compliant. The next question is, perfect, now that we know that audits are inevitable, it's going to happen, the question of, all right, what is the expectation out of this audit? Okay, and when do I really start to get serious about it? Okay, so are there timelines when I should start to work towards being audit ready, or do I, by design, right from the get-go, use the right tools that are going to keep me audit ready at any given time? In terms of what am I being audited for, you're being audited for these 4 top topics. The topics include practice review. Okay, so these are the things that you're being audited for. Practice review. How are you managing your clients, your matters, your procedures, the retainer letters, and all the communication that goes back between you and your clients? Okay, that's a practice review. You're going to be looked at very importantly and looked at very stringently the financial review. Okay, if you are a firm that's dealing with trust money, then you can be rest assured there's going to be a lot of questions around how you manage trust money, especially retainers and etc. There's going to be a lot of questions around how you manage general accounts, especially your fee book, your expense book, and they also kind of help you through that process to give you guidelines for how you can manage your business. So if for some reason your expenses are more than your fees, the comparison of those 2 documents kind of give you an understanding of how you are performing as a business to begin with. The trust and the bookkeeping guidelines are 2 good documents that you can actually review. We're going to look at that at the end of the slides to give you some references that you can look at. uLaw as a legal accounting product is built taking these bookkeeping guidelines as principles. So when you use products such as uLaw, you can be rest assured that you're compliant right through from the start to the end. A technology review is used so that you, as a legal professional, are not only aware, but are also communicating, certain safety measures, and are communicating the risks and rewards of the different tools that you use as a legal professional to store data that's related to your clients. So you have to communicate that to your client either through a retainer letter or an engagement letter. And you obviously, as a legal professional, prior to using any tool, have to do the necessary steps to make sure you've done the due diligence. But from an audit perspective, they're looking for you to have communicated and understood all the safety measures that you have taken as you use these tools. As an example, if you use laptops or if you use a specific device and all your data is within that one device, and if it's a desktop-based product that you're using, a good question is what happens when your computer crashes? Do you have a way to back up all that data? What happens if that data is lost? Or what happens if your laptop is stolen? Do you have any backup measures? Etc. Right? We've had this instance where one of our clients who used to use a desktop solution had a virus, and that was the only machine that she was using, and it ended up that she had to recreate the entire set of books and the clients and the matters and spend a lot of time on it to just recreate everything that she lost. And that's a bit of a stressful time. Those are types of things that you want to keep in mind. And if you do consider a cloud-based solution such as uLaw, then you should be asking all the questions about how secure is the cloud, what are the security measures that are being taken, how secure is my client data, and you obviously want to communicate that to your clients through documentation. Then last but not the least, you're being audited for your professional and time management capability. So the Law Society is looking, to make sure that you as a legal professional, besides being compliant from a technology, financial, and the practice management perspective are bringing to the table the level of professionalism that this particular legal profession demands, especially when you as a legal professional have to deal with multiple matters, multiple trust accounts, or ensuring that your client's needs are being met on a timely basis. There are no complaints that have been received under your name to the Law Society for, let's say, professional conduct or any time management components. Okay, so that's kind of the fourth component. Our goal and what we're trying to preach to the core here is, instead of thinking about it, and obviously you get a notification, so the Law Society will send you a formal communication that you're going to be audited over the next 6 weeks or 2 months or 3 months. They're going to schedule it in advance and tell you that. So it's not just they're just going to walk into your door on a day to see how you are. They do schedule it ahead of time, and you have that time window now to prepare yourself and prepare your books. But that was old school, right? That was with the advent of technology and tools such as uLaw, you actually can now be compliant right from the get-go, right from day one, just by design, and be ready to be audited at any given time. And we're going to touch upon the different components and have you explore how you can accomplish that. So let's work towards, in the future, how you can be thinking about audit on a daily basis, make it a big part of your design of your legal practice management, and execute it so that you're always audit ready. Next question is, how do you prepare yourself for this audit? Okay, what does a healthy legal firm or a law firm mean in terms of bookkeeping, or as all these different 4 components that we just discussed? Okay, reiterating the first point that these again, I know I'm preaching to the core. The audits, as serious as they are, because we just, a few weeks back we heard about this instance where a legal professional in Canada, or specifically in Ontario, misappropriated trust funds, and actually his license was canceled, right? I'm sure you've read about it. So it is a very, very serious issue if you've not done, and again, ignorance is not bliss, so you can't say I didn't know. That's another issue. So it's very important that you take this seriously, but the process of an audit was not necessarily meant only to scare you, and it was not like an examination, if you will, but it was truly to find issues. It's truly to find issues because they expect you to not know everything. They expect maybe there's certain rooms for improvement that they could highlight, but it was truly to help you through a process and a path of being compliant. If you are compliant from day one, these audits can actually happen in a very fast manner, and they're going to be very happy that you've taken the extra effort either to design by the process or choose the right tools to keep you compliant. Okay. So how do you prepare yourself for this audit? Why not start from day one, as I mentioned? By looking at the different procedures and processes that go behind what it really takes to stay compliant, taking a quick review, changing policies within the company, or if you're just getting started, adopting to certain standards and processes that can keep you compliant from day one is a great first step. Okay? Keep a review of all of your financial statements, and we say this to all our clients all the time. One, ensure that you track and measure, especially docket or track every transaction that happens in your legal firm on a daily basis, as and when it happens. Okay? If you've got that retainer in your hand, please take that 2 minutes to quickly put that retainer as an activity or as a transaction within your bookkeeping software. And if it needs to be deposited in the bank, do that right away. If there's an expense that you've just incurred as a business, take a photo of that expense, have it electronically available, put that disbursement into your bookkeeping or legal accounting software. Okay, so as and when things happen, use the tools, use the advantage of being in the 21st century with a lot of legal tools available to help you stay compliant and help you with your efficiencies. Okay, so in doing that, Also keep in mind that you have the opportunity now to review all of your financial statements, if not on a daily basis, at a minimum a weekly basis. Okay, times gone are the days where where people are reviewing it only on a monthly basis at the end of the month, just time for your bookkeeping compliance documents. Okay, if you can do it on a daily, weekly basis, then it's just going to amplify that for the monthly and the yearly. Use a checklist, right? Start with the checklist, and for each time period, have a separate checklist. And as anal as this may sound, having these processes and tweaking it based on your style of work and your character and how you go about things in life, these checklists can actually help you towards that path of being audit ready from get-go. Okay, so here are some pointers or some examples of what you may want to think about. Weekly bank account validation check. Ensure that the bank transactions that reflect in your bank, which is truly the real-life transactions, are in sync with the transactions that you have documented within your legal accounting software. That's a good example. If certain transactions are missing, then you are able to then quickly, within that time period when your memory is fresh, go and reconcile, make the appropriate changes. A great example of this happening all the time is where you have checks in your hand, you reflected it in the bookkeeping software sometimes, because as the client gave you that check, right, you may actually enter it as a transaction so that you can give that client a receipt, but you may physically hold on to that check before you deposit it into your bank for quite a period of time. We see that happen quite often. And the further you keep those checks in your hand, the harder it is to reconcile, and the more thought process, thinking, and memories you got to use to remember. And let's say, God forbid, you lose that check. For some reason, you kept it in your office. 2-3 weeks goes by, it just went away with all the other paper that gets shredded, then that's a challenge. So, repeating to the core, I know, but please stay on top of all your financial documents on a much stringent, timely fashion. Look at a financial checklist on a monthly basis, your trust ledgers, your general ledgers, especially your reconciliation documents. Now, the Law Society recommends that you do a reconciliation at a minimum once a month. The Reconcile report talks about exactly what I mentioned earlier, ensuring that the bookkeeping transactions match with what's in the bank, and if they don't match, the reasoning for why they don't match. That's what goes into the reconciliation report, especially for trust. Very important, because it's frowned upon and it's almost close to being your license canceled if the trust funds are not being managed properly. Okay? And from a quarterly perspective, our recommendation is maybe you have a look at the policies and the procedures that you've outlined for your firm to review client communication. Okay? We spoke about retainer letters. We spoke about how you can communicate all the risks and rewards of the tools that you use. For example, we have clients that use within their engagement letter or retainer letter about the fact that they use cloud-based software such as uLaw. They use email such as Outlook, Gmail, and there are certain obvious risks involved with the data that's being in the cloud. And the reward obviously is accessibility and efficiency, as well as communicating how these particular product companies or how they as a legal professional, the steps they have taken to mitigate those risks. For example, they've chosen uLaw, which is 256-bit encrypted, highly secure, data secured in Canada, so there's no Patriot Act or any of that. That safeguards them. Email, they look at choosing a Gmail which has redundant servers. It has the same level of security, so that, and it's password protected, both these products, just as an example. So they outline that they have taken the necessary steps to mitigate it. And last but not the least, from let's say a yearly review, and this could be even a 6 months review, is the health of your business. Truly, it comes down to not only how are you conducting yourself to be compliant, but doing that, how are you running this business? Was this what you wanted to get going right from day one when you graduated wanting to become a legal professional, right? You have now legal accounting tools that can give you these types of numbers on a daily basis, but it's probably a good thing to look at it, if not quarterly, at a minimum every 6 months. Where am I making my money? And you might think, why is this a big part of the audit checklist, or why is this part of the compliance? It is because, believe it or not, the auditors and the Law Society, to a good extent, want to ensure that you are successful as a legal professional, because if you are not, you're going to close down your shop and either join a company or anything else, and that kind of has its own effects, ripple effects, right, from small businesses growing to the Law Society just losing one good legal professional, right? They are equally interested in how you perform as a business and the hygiene and the health of your business. So let's move on kind of to the next slide. And this is really taking a deeper dive into the different checklists that we spoke about. Those 4 different components. So we've got the practice management checklist broken down. If you look at it by client service, communication, matter management, and procedures. Those 2 major components that form the checklist. I'm going to run through this real fast. I don't want to just read what I put on the presentation. This is also available for you to review at a later date. We're going to record this and make it available to you. But let's quickly go through, a checklist that you may want to prepare for yourself. So starting with client service and communication, I spoke about how you can communicate all that to your clients through retainer letters. But a big part of your policy development or procedural development for your firm could be how you internally docket and take detailed notes as you deal with client matters. Make sure it's clearly communicated. Especially, you may start off as a small legal firm. It might be a solo. It might just be a reminder for yourself initially. But God willing, let's say you grow into this mid-sized, large legal firm and you're starting to hire individuals to help you through that. These policies and procedures are also going to help them so that it's one established policy and everyone's on the same page. Okay? How do you handle retainers? Okay? How do you handle cash retainers? Do you have a policy for that? Do you say yes to it, no to it? And if you are actually accepting cash retainers, have a policy of how you can ensure that money is deposited back into your trust account within 24 hours, because that's a legal, Law Society compliance. Let's say you may have files where there are joint retainers. Okay, how do you ensure conflict screening is done for each client, especially for joint retainers as multiple parties are involved? How do you deal with fee complaints, clarifications, emails? Okay, and the list goes on, right? A very important step is how do you communicate the status of a file to your client? And this is one of the things that complaints that Law Society receives a lot of complaints from public is sometimes some legal professionals leave them in the dark, them not knowing or progressing in their case, and they just got this one fat bill at the end of one fine day, right? So avoiding those types of complaints or notions by communicating through, let's say, an invoice, through a statement of activity. These are all very important documents that you should keep in mind as you figure out how you communicate part of that practice management checklist. Okay. And last but not the least, if for some reason things don't work out and either you non-engage with the client or the client non-engages with you, again, have a fallback mechanism. Think it through, have a proactive way of handling such situations. You may want to talk to colleagues, you may want to talk to seniors in this industry. Sometimes they're willing to share some of their non-engagement documents that actually could help you with a bit of a stepping stone, if you will. So have a non-engagement process. Do you still keep the money? How much of money do you give them back, et cetera, right? How do you deal with ghost clients? Ghost clients are those who come in and flirt with the idea of engaging you, but give you some information about who they are, their address maybe, but never come back to retain you. You still have the legal obligation to store that information to use it for any conflict. Okay? Moving along, so let's say you've taken care of all of that initial client intake, client communication process. You've started to build that file, how do you deal with file name conventions? And this is a very important step. We've had clients in the past, before they worked with us, who actually created their own file numbering system. Sometimes they created the same file number for two different matters for the same client because they did it as a manual process. Having a legal accounting product that really understands the space, these products will allow you to create unique, searchable file names for the same client for two different matters. Okay? As simple as this may sound, these are the types of things that you need to keep in mind and review it and refresh it so that you're always doing the right things. Are you creating a proper retainer letter? Does the retainer letter talk about the nature of scope? Does it talk about the non-engagement clauses? How much would you charge for disbursements? Do you plan to do it through trust, or do you plan to do it through your general and then reimburse them through an invoice? Okay. The fact that you're a busy legal professional, do you have a process of maintaining or having a proper way of classifying your files as different statuses? Closed, archived could be some examples, so that your focus is always on the active files, and the others are more so for information and conflict screening purposes. Okay. At the closure of a client file, as I mentioned, some of the key documents that you want to keep in mind are statement of activities, settlement accounts, which really talks about all the financial touch points right from the first day to the last. Bill of cost, how much did it cost to actually produce the entire transaction, and a closing letter which says, thank you so much for your business, you paid us in full, or whatever that may be, making sure there's a logical closure to that file. Okay. We'll jump into a few specific nuances of these practice management checkpoints, and I'll start with the retainer. If you're dealing with trust money, this is a very, very important starting point, and to have that done right can actually mean the whole, can be the difference in the whole equation, right? And then we'll look at the financial checklist. How do you handle such retainers? And again, we're just breaking down those four different components as I pointed to you: practice management, financial, technology review, and the compliance from a conduct perspective. We're just breaking it down into different components. That's all we're doing. So we'll look at these different financial updates. How are you managing your clients? Okay. And again, please feel free to ask any questions or stop me at any time if you have any questions. We'd love for this to be a two-way process so that I can answer any questions. So from a retainer perspective, for someone who's new in this business, figuring out whether you should have a trust account, whether you should take a retainer or not, the legal profession is one of the very few professions in this world that allows you legally to accept money in advance for the work that you're going to do in the future. Okay? But like anything else, with more power comes more responsibility, right? We've heard that before. You do have now the responsibility of managing that money that you get in advance in a very professional and a legal, very compliant way. And what that really means is if you take that money in advance, put it into a trust account that you cannot misappropriate or touch or repurpose that money and fund for something else. You can buy a laptop using that trust money, for example. Don't do it, right? It's frowned upon. It's not meant to do that. That money is your client's money. The way you can actually buy a laptop out of that money is by showing the effort that you've put in. So let's say you receive a $1,000 retainer. Let's look at the different components of it. In that retainer, let's define the nature and scope of the work, the client obligation. So a client obligation could be topping up that retainer once, say, a retainer hits a certain amount. Let's say this is a criminal or family matter that's ongoing. You're obviously going to be spending a lot of effort and time, and sometimes it takes a long time to complete these matters, in which case, in the retainer letter, you may have outlined a client obligation to not only pay you on time, but also top up those retainers on a timely manner. Okay? The frequency of communication, the agreement's termination clause. Now, if you may decide to use other consultants, and this is a very, very important part of that retainer letter and the correspondence that you have with your client. This is another area that we hear about complaints coming from the end user or the end client, is my lawyer actually used another lawyer to do this for me, or another paralegal, etc., right? Sometimes it happens that you may need stand-ins at court. So we've often seen how lawyers can employ a paralegal, or within the paralegals, you've seen that as well, where they actually do a stand-in, either because of the location or for time purposes and non-availability, etc. So it's very important that you outline those in that retainer letter. Talk about the risks, as I mentioned, of using the technology, just email, cloud-based software, all that in the document. And we were talking about the retainer and how important it is to ensure that it's compliant and dealt with. And the example of buying a laptop. So technically, let's say you receive a $1,000 retainer from your client. Okay, you're going to put that money into your trust account. Now you're going to start to work for that client. So you're going to, let's say, conduct that first initial meeting with that client. You may actually attend court. So that first meeting may have dealt with 2 hours of your billable time at about $200. So now you're starting to put your effort. Once you docket all this on a timely manner, it's very important that you produce an invoice, which is the legal document that outlines the effort you've put in, but more importantly, the amount of money that now you're eligible to withdraw from the trust money. So let's say your laptop was $500. You put in 2 hours of billable time and then maybe another couple of hours on a court visit. So now there's about $800 of effort that you've outlined in this invoice. Once you generate the invoice, make sure you send it to your client and communicate that here's 4 hours of my effort towards that initial meeting and the court visit, which percolates to about $800 based on a $200 billing rate per hour. And you're now telling your client that, hey, I'm going to be withdrawing that $800 from that initial $1,000 trust money that you gave me because I've earned it. Once you've earned it, it's very important you move that trust money of $800, which is your eligible trust money, into your general account. A general account from a business perspective is your money or the business's money, and that's the earned money. So the $1,000 is the retainer to retain you as a legal professional provided by your client. The $800 is the eligible trust money that you can now move from trust to general, and now you can use that $800 that's now in your general account to purchase that laptop on a Best Buy website. Okay, so that's really the process. It's not where you can actually go pay for that laptop right from your trust account and give them a trust check for that $800. It's not your money till you've earned it, and how you've earned it is by providing the effort in means of an invoice and sending that to your client. Okay? I hope I made sense in explaining that, this process. And keep in mind, it's very important when you deal with retainer that you're outlining, not just from a retainer perspective, but also from a client matter file management perspective. Being very clear about what these costs are, what the fee structure is, how often does that client need to replenish your retainers, what is the process and procedure for you to deal with cash retainers. The Law Society has guidelines that you can accept cash retainers to about $7,500, over which the client would have to give you either a check or any other form of payment. How do you deal with disbursements? As I mentioned, you may either just pay out disbursements right from your trust account. Okay, you can buy laptops, but if you want to go pay for an application fee that's pertaining to that matter, that you can do from your trust account, and that's a disbursement and not an office expense. A disbursement is an expense that's recoverable for the work that you do for your client. So as much as I mentioned, you can write a trust check for a laptop for your own office expense, you can still write a check from your trust account to the courthouse or to the Ministry of Finance to pay for a court fee or an application fee, as long as it is for that particular matter, money is being used appropriately, okay? Because that reflects in your trust journal as well as your ledger. So in that example that I gave you of $1,000, if $800 was taken away for the 4 hours of effort, and now you can write the courthouse a trust check of $100 for the court fee, that money is taken right out of your trust. You don't have to even send an invoice to reflect it, okay? But if you do a disbursement out of your general, let's say you're collecting points and you have this business credit card, so you would like to now pay for it from your pocket first, from your business. So you use the credit card to pay that court fee of $100, then you need to reflect it in an invoice, just like the effort you put in to say, hey, I've earned this $100 because, buddy, I've already paid for it from my pocket, and now I'm going to move that $100 from trust to general. So that's the difference between paying for a disbursement from you directly from your trust account or from your general and then taking it and moving it from trust to general. Okay? Outlining all of this to your client in a way also helps you define it internally within your firm too. As I mentioned, simple steps. Create a file. Okay? Get that retainer if that's a big part of your business. Docket your time effort, whether it's billable time, whether it's contingency, whether it's flat fee, whatever the case may be. The style of docketing does not matter. Docket your effort and any disbursements that there may be during that cycle. Raise the invoice that reflects the effort and the money that you have earned. Move that money earned, called the eligible trust amount, from your trust account into your general account. Very, very important, because that's one step a lot of our legal friends forget. They raise the invoice, but then they forget to move that eligible trust money that's sitting in their trust account, that's theirs, into their general account. Okay? So always do that. And if you're not dealing with trust account at all, then make sure that, if it's a leap of faith that you're working with this client, that they would pay you after you've done your work. Make sure you're sending them interim invoices. Make it a big part of your firm's habit. All this helps. All these little steps help you to be compliant. Okay? So when you're dealing with just general accounts and you're not taking any money in as a retainer, then you're docketing your effort and generate those interim bills. If you did that one meeting, maybe you don't do it by docket, but maybe a couple of dockets, you raise an invoice so that your client knows that they need to pay you for the work that you're putting in. And they get in the habit of paying you for the effort. Especially if you're dealing with disbursements, please make it a habit to raise those interim bills so that you can get those recoverable expenses. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting at an expense. And if you delay that, sometimes we've heard situations where people don't pay you for that as well. Okay, so we spoke about the different forms, the different documents that the Law Society are going to look for. So this is one slide that really outlines it for you. I'm going to take a quick step just to iterate this to you from our product standpoint, and this is no means of demonstrating our product or marketing our product. It's just to walk you through the component of it. So in uLaw, we have this one panel called Compliance that truly outlines the different Law Society compliance documents that you need to generate, right? So if you wanted to generate the client's trust ledger for the month of October, so you can choose that date. And generate that trust ledger right there. So these are the set of documents that the Law Society auditor is looking for on a monthly basis. Okay? You do your reconciliation first and then start to generate all of these documents. So here's a quick example of this particular slide that I was going through. Okay. You've got your trust ledgers, trust receipts, disbursements, reconciliation, very important, that's your first step. And then depending, a Form 9A is a document specific to the province of Ontario, where if you do any electronic fund transfer, so when we spoke about moving money from that trust account to your general account, moving that earned money or the eligible trust money, there are many forms in which you can move that money from one account, bank account, to another, right? Now, in the old school, or even today, you have legal professionals who write themselves a check. So you may write yourself a check from that trust account to be paid into your general. But if with the advent of technology and with all of the banks in Canada, especially being online, if you do end up transferring that money electronically from an online bank, let's say deal with RBC or TD, you have the opportunity to transfer money from one account to the other. So if you do so, and that's fine, you just have to ensure that there's a Form 9A that is filled out for every transaction where you're moving money from a trust account to a general account electronically. Okay. Then you've got your general accounts, your general ledgers, your receipts and disbursement expense journals. We have a full-fledged demonstration and a CPD webinar next month where we're going to be outlining how you generate these documents. So please do stay tuned in. You can visit us at uLawPractice.com/webinar to get a list of all those webinars. Okay. Are you maintaining your taxes? So if you're receiving HST, are you ensuring that you're doing that right on time? Okay, so let's take a look at that ledger document. Okay, so this is what a trust ledger document looks like, right? It's exactly what the bookkeeping compliance talks about. This is who you are. I'm using a fictitious lawyer by the name Roger Moore. It's his trust ledger printed on this date, but for the month of 1st of October to 31st. And it lists it by the different clients, which is very important. So for Mr. Andrew Shomi, for this particular matter, that's the balance in trust. Okay? For the same client, there's a different matter, the divorce. As you can see, the file numbers are different, and it has to be. There's a different balance in trust. Mr. Shomi obviously has quite a few, and if you look at Andy Murray, he's got about $1,000, $1,175 still left in trust. And here's all his transactions. He received a $1,500 retainer. You had a disbursement, as well as another disbursement for a court fee that was raised through the invoice, and there was a $325 disbursement, which is also moved from the trust, and that's the balance left in trust. So as you can see, this is a payout from trust, meaning this $325 was directly taken out of your trust account. Okay? Okay, so with us having a few more slides to go, about 5 more slides in about 10 more minutes, I request you to keep all your questions ready. Before I jump into any technology review components, the last but not the least, within the financial documents, the slide is how are you managing your client updates? How often are you doing it? You may end up with a situation that even when you send that invoice, sometimes clients may come back to ask you for certain questions within that invoice. So to save time, to be efficient, and to avoid this back and forth, a very proactive measure that you can take is to be very clear and as elaborate as possible within that invoice. So trying to give the client a full picture of not just the effort and the amount of money that you're raising in that invoice, but really give them a full picture of, all right, how much of money did you give me? How much of retainer did I have? How much am I charging you for this cycle? If I've already received any payments or moved trust money, how much was that? So putting all of that in a nice way of showing that invoice and being very elaborate reduces the amount of back and forth that may end up with the client. Okay? And invoices may also be clarified using a statement of activity. A statement of activity is nothing but a simple way. Let me just go into my matter just to show you an example of what that looks like. So for, let's say there's one particular, you have a statement of activity for this particular matter that you can generate that really outlines each and every step that this legal professional has done for this particular client, for this particular matter. Okay? It really talks about the different times that was spent. Obviously, this is a fairly simple matter, but if I were to look at maybe the Adam versus Steffi divorce, as you can see, it's important that you manage different file numbers. Let's do a statement of activity for this matter. Having this along with your invoice is going to only help you further define the effort that's gone into that matter. Okay? Do you have a matter closure procedure? Very important. So let's say you've done with all the work. How do you close that matter out? For one, you got to change the status of that matter so that you are now able to stay on top of what's important, all the active files. But at the end of that client closure, you want to make sure that there's a full statement of settlement. Oh, sorry about that. Statement of settlements and accounts, and a matter closure letter. And if, let's say, there's still some trust money that's left, you probably want to refund that retainer, for example, back to the client as well. Okay? Okay, so let's quickly review the technology components that you're being audited for as well and how you prepare for that. As I earlier mentioned, keep a tab, keep policy, keep track of how you want to back up your data. The data is obviously very critical in a legal office because it's not just your data, it's your client's data, which is very sensitive. Making sure there's a process for backing up this data or finding the right tools, legal accounting products that actually help you with automating these backups. Find a way to manage documents in a very efficient and robust way. You have to be able to track those documents, store those documents, and retrieve them in a very timely and in a very efficient manner, because that's, your differentiator, if you will, in this very competitive business. Okay. If you are actually going to go towards legal accounting software, especially on the cloud, such as uLaw, you really want to make sure that you've read through the policies about the security and, very importantly, the availability. So just, it's as much as it's an assumption, it's a given that, for example, uLaw has a 99.9% availability. So there are that occasional weekend, updates that are done, and making sure that you as the client are getting that information. We send it through emails, we send it through other forms. So you want to go interview, talk to these different cloud providers or whoever you choose to, the different products, and make sure that you communicate that to your client as well, that you are well aware of that. If you're going to be buying a desktop solution, or if you're going to buy a laptop or any electronic device, make sure that there's proper antivirus that's installed on these different devices. If you're going to be using systems across, let's say, a private LAN network, make sure that that's equally secured as well, so that at no given time is that data open to be taken out. Okay, and clearly indicate those risks involved so that in a way you're safeguarding yourself with your client as well. Email is a great example. So you really want to indicate that, hey, if you want me to send you emails as a proper communication, be aware that there is obviously electronic medium is prone to certain risks, and this is how, by far, I've taken all the necessary measures to mitigate those risks. So it's password protected, it's along, things of that nature. Last but not the least, with so many, moving balls and moving targets, staying compliant is obviously a given. It's a must. And what can you do as a legal professional in today's context, in today's day and time, is choosing the right software. Let software work for you, and let it be a legal accounting software if possible, because with the cloud, what it's made it cost effective. It's not as expensive as before, and it's actually more efficient. And why you should do that is because then that allows you to be more efficient, more profitable, because then you're not spending as much as manual effort in doing all these bookkeeping, and also allows you to be very efficient in managing these files and gives you the extra time to spend either on your business and or on your family, which are very important. Okay, so no matter whether you buy the software or not, it's still important, even after you buy the software, to take all these steps. For one, as I mentioned earlier, please make sure that you're finding a way or a discipline to record events as and when they happen. So legal accounting software, I mean, uLaw as an example, today has a mobile app that allows you to dock it right from your phone. So if that makes it easier for you to stay on top of these transactions as and when they happen, even if you're not in the office, is a great way of how you can make that happen. As I mentioned earlier, please have a plan to review your financial records and your bank records, if possible, on a weekly basis. Okay, please make it a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday morning effort, about 15-20 minutes, to reconcile it on a more periodic basis than just even a month, because that's really going to allow you to be very confident about those numbers. Okay, and let the software, which is meant to be doing this, do it for you, and you just tell it what needs to be done, and just tell the software what actually happened, because that's something that the software would not know. So keeping in mind that legal professional is a fun job to do as long as you can have the right tools and methodologies to stay compliant, accountable, and find a way that it gives you insight about your business so that you can continue to take the right steps to be profitable. And if you're not, take the right steps to pivot and mitigate how you can now move towards being profitable as a business. Okay? And as I mentioned earlier, this webinar is going to be recorded, and here are some references for you to look at, especially the spot. I mean, you can Google this as well. You can look at especially the bookkeeping guideline as well as the audit checklist. And there's also a FAQ, which really talks about the different questions that people have asked about these checklists as well as these audits. And keep in mind that the audit remains to be the same regardless of whether you are a legal professional, paralegal, or a lawyer. I think the type of work that you do leads to either extra documents that need to be presented or not. Okay? Last but not the least, again, thank you so much for participating on this special VIP CPD. If you have any specific questions, please feel free to email us at support@uLawPractice.com. You do earn 1 hour of CPD credits for participating in today's webinar, so make sure you take advantage of that, and it's totally free. And if you don't know who we are, again, please visit us on our website. It's uLawPractice.com. We are a Canadian legal accounting and a practice management software, and our existence is to make our clients provide a very cost-effective Canadian cloud and a compliant legal accounting and practice management software company. Okay. Do check us out on Capterra for any client reviews about who we are and how we serve our clients. And for those who want to take us on a trial, we do offer a no obligation 30-day trial as well. So with that, I'm going to open the floors for any questions that you may have. If you don't want to ask me now, that's fine. You can think about it and email us at support@uLawPractice.com. Okay? Thank you very much.